Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and it's time for another Sit and Talk. So we are now in, who cares what the date, you'll see when it's posted, it's sometime in April. And I'm going to do something a little different this time in the way that I have ordered the comments that I am going to be answering. And this is going to be something I'm going to do from now on, so hopefully it'll change how you also leave comments and then also help me to organize them. Because we've just several weeks in a row now, I've had far too many comments, like most of the time twice as many comments as I can possibly get through. And I feel bad about that because there's just no way I can compensate for it. I can't do twice as many of these. I can't make it 2 hours long. Like, it's just, this is all I have time to do. But I want to make sure that the questions that you want answered are answered. And so here's how it's going to work. Normally, if you want your question answered, all you have to do is leave a comment on the Sit and Talk video on Mini Wargaming, not on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a link in the video description to the Mini Wargaming site where you need to leave a comment. You do need a registered account, but it's free, so that's fine. But because there's been so many, I am now going to prioritize the comments that get thumbs up. And they have to, there's a minimum number of thumbs up that they have to get. I'm not going to say what it is. So you can, of course, thumb up your own comment, but that won't be enough to make it a priority. And so basically what I want you to do is, if you have a question, go and leave it, but also skim through the questions. And if there's any others that you're like, yeah, I definitely want that one answered, then thumb it up. In fact, skim through the questions first, because there might be somebody else asking the same question as you, in which case you don't even have to leave it. You can just thumb it up so that it gets answered. I know it's not quite as personal as it could have been, like as it was before, where you left a comment, I would say your username and be like, thanks for the comment, and answer yours specifically. I still answer a lot of them, like usually around half of them. And so I do get to a lot of them. And if you're still pretty quick to get it in there, then it'll be fine. But really going through and thumbing up the comments that you want answered will really help. And so I have prioritized the handful of comments that happen to be thumbs up from last Sit and Talk, but I'm hoping that that we'll get lots of thumbs up, and that way I can go through the order in which you guys want them to. And of course, if this is your first time watching a Sit and Talk, this is a show where I just answer your questions and comments about whatever. Usually it's wargaming related, often it's business related, and sometimes we get into politics and religion. So if you are easily offended by those topics, meaning the politics and religion, not so much the wargaming, hopefully you're not offended by that, then please do not watch this show, because I am not going to not answer questions about religion, and I'm free about talking about what I believe. And so if that bothers you, then please just don't watch the show, because so far we've been able to keep it really civil. People have left really good comments, even when they disagree, because a lot of people disagree with what I believe, and I fully expect that, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's encouraged that everybody is able to speak what they believe without fear of repercussion. So we should be able to do that. We should be able to be civil that way, even when we strongly disagree on beliefs. So let's go through these questions now. Havoc06, Matt, you find yourself dropped into the 41st millennium with nothing but a bolt pistol, a chainsword, and a t-shirt save. Oh wait, no, that's not my t-shirt save. Would you rather fight a Tyrannofex-sized Genestealer or 20 Genestealer-sized Tyrannofexes? See, that really depends. Does the Genestealer that's a Tyrannofex size still have the profile of a Genestealer? Or does it become like some sort of hybrid, like it's a monstrous creature Genestealer? And do the Genestealer-sized Tyrannofexes still have the profile of the Tyrannofexes? Or do they like drop their toughness down and everything else? So that's really what matters, because a bolt pistol and a chainsword is not going to take out a monstrous creature. It's going to be much more. It's going to be much better at taking out smaller creatures. And on top of that, the t-shirt save is going to be ignored by a monstrous creature. So if these 20 Genestealer-sized Tyrannofexes all have their torrent acid sprays, which are strength 6, AP 4, which will ignore my armor, and they're all toughness 6, then I'll ignore them. And if that Genestealer, which is a Tyrannofex size, still is just toughness 4, I'll go after that. But if it's the other way around, I basically want to go after the one that would be the smaller one, the one that would have toughness 4 and that wouldn't have torrents of acid spray. So that's my answer, because it's not 100% clear which one, how you're exactly specifying that. If you're talking like realistically, like what I'd like to face, I think I'd rather face the one big thing, because Genestealers are actually like pretty big, and having 20 of them, that would be pretty terrifying. Having one big monster, that's terrifying too, but I think less terrifying. Benoslav, the campaign was awesome. Steve was awesome. Vault membership has also been awesome for me so far. am a member for around a month. Please make some kind of video on the Astra Militarum and the changes compared to Imperial Guard. I'm only starting now with the hobby, and I've got myself into Imperial Guard because I always liked them the most fluff-wise. I've gotten their Codex in February, which thankfully was given to me as a present, so I didn't pay for it. Didn't get to play with it yet because I'm still gluing and painting them. Big shout out to Chris. His tutorials make this so much easier for me. To sum up, tell me stuff about Astra Militarum, pretty please. Well, I can't tell anything about it right now. I've just started to look through the stuff, and I'm a little confused as to what their intent is. I know there's been rumors that people are saying that they're renaming the Imperial Guard to the Astra Militarum, but it kind of looks like they're releasing several codexes for it, not just one, like this Militarum Tempest one. That's not, I thought that, I'm like, oh, there's the Imperial Guard, but no, apparently it's not the Imperial Guard. It's like a part of the Imperial Guard, and then you got the Imperial Knights, which I know are not part of the Imperial Guard. And so I'm confused, are they taking the Imperial Knight Codex or Imperial Guard Codex and dividing it into multiple codexes, which they'll call like Astra Militarum and Militarum Tempest and all of that? Or what are they doing? I don't exactly know. Is it a good idea to take the Imperial Guard Codex and divide it? I would say no, because they don't need more codexes to try to keep up to date, which just means that certain ones will become more popular than others, and so pieces of the Imperial Guard army are just never going to get updated, or they'll get updated less often. They definitely need less codexes than they have right now, not more. That's why I was glad when the Space Marines came out that they kind of folded in the Black Templar with it. I know, of course, Black Templar people don't appreciate that, and I understand, but there just wasn't enough different about them to really warrant their own codex, unlike the Grey Knights, for example. Even the Dark Angels and Blood Angels, I would argue, could be folded into the Space Marine Codex because they're really not that different, except for a couple special rules, maybe. I know you're thinking, well, but Assault Marines can be taken as troops, and that makes them different. And like, sure, but you could do that in the Space Marine Codex, that when you bring the Blood Angels captain or this Blood Angels named character, that you're allowed to bring Assault Marines as troops. So for me, it would be better for them to simplify and have less codexes. Not the Xenos ones. The Xenos ones they're all so different that you can't combine them, except maybe Eldar and Dark Eldar, but I'm not even suggesting that necessarily. Although it wouldn't necessarily be a horrible idea, but I don't think so. But more just simplifying all the Space Marine and Imperial Guard ones. But at the same time, those are their big money makers. But are they the big money makers because they've made so many codexes? In which case it would be arguable that, well, then make tons of codexes for the Xenos as well. So it's hard to know the cause and effect. You can't just say, well, the Space Marines are the big money makers, and so therefore they're going to make more codexes. Or are the Space Marines the big money makers because they have so many codexes, and so it gives more people different ways of grabbing them? And they can be like, well, my friend plays Space Marines, but I play Blood Angels, and that's different. Whereas, like, I play White Scars and he plays Ultramarines, that's the same codex, so you might feel that you're playing the same army. Not quite sure. Liao Hua. What happened to Owen? I explained this in the last sit and talk, but he got another job because he needed full-time work, and we couldn't offer that to him at the time, so he left. Nobody was angry. We're not mad at him. It's part of life that you don't keep the same job forever usually, and so yeah. So that's all that happened. That's really all. Rain Ow. Sorry for the double post, but I decided to ask again to take advantage of my free trial while I can. Well, you don't need a vault membership to ask a question here. So I very much respect your views on religion, so I feel I can ask you this. This one was thumbed up a couple times, so that's interesting. Excuse me. I'm actually using a microphone this time just to improve sound quality. I usually don't bother just because it uses batteries for an hour, but well, we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't cut out. I noticed the batteries are not super high. Anyways, on to the comment. My friend's priest in his church is a person who feels that God's law is the only way and must push himself into any conversation or any subject to make this view known. While this wouldn't normally be a problem, he has taken to harassing a good friend of my girlfriend's about his sexual beliefs, saying that typical "you're an abomination in God's eye, you're going to hell," quoting biblical scriptures type of thing. This has been going on for a long time now, and it's gotten to the point where they're starting to affect him emotionally, and I can't legally do anything to try and help the situation because the priest has been part of our friend's family who accepts his sexuality, and they feel if they do anything it will be offensive to their religion. That's a tough situation to be in because the priest is in a situation of leadership and power at the same time. I personally believe that if what you're saying is accurate, which I'm not doubting that, I just want to clarify my comments, that the priest is not acting the way he should. Even though I would maybe agree with his beliefs, I'm not sure if I would. I'm not exactly, you haven't been specific, which is fine. We're not supposed to harass others into into following our beliefs. It's fine to share opinions, but not nose our way into every conversation and to take the opportunity at every point to point out things that you don't agree with somebody else. That's just not the way to do it. It's definitely not the loving way that was taught well, when Jesus Christ was on the earth. Jesus Christ had no problem just laying it down to the people who were being obviously wicked and trying to work against him. But he's also very compassionate. And so we have to make sure that we are that way too. Regardless of anyone's views, this kind of harassment should not be tolerated. I agree. Is there any advice or suggestion to try and help our situation? It's tough. If he's a friend of the family, that's tough. So, I don't know. I'd talk to the family about it to see if they can talk to him, but it's just a tough situation. And sometimes I don't know what I would do in that situation. I'm sorry if I sounded mean or anything negative. It certainly wasn't my intention. Thanks for the help. Nope, you did not. Fury in Chains. We all know that the Big Bang was started with jump leads from Starbug. Now I saw this comment, and I quickly Googled Starbug, which was like, I'm not even quite sure what it is. So, I agree. Maximus the Lord. Hey Matt, a few questions/suggestions. In the previous Sit and Talk, you said you do not often read 40K novels. I suggest you should, as several of the authors, such as Graham McNeil, actually worked at Games Workshop, and thus have much insight into the 40K fluff. 2. If you could make 3 rule changes to 40K, what would they be? I've talked about this in the past. I'd get rid of challenges, although I've gotten used to them, so I don't mind them as much just because I'm used to them, but I still find them kind of silly in a lot of circumstances. I'd make vehicles act like monstrous creatures in that they wouldn't have like they could have their armor facings, but they could be like toughness facings, and they have a certain number of wounds to go through. And I know people could argue, well, they're different, but they're not really. Like, seriously, like a Carnifex is just a Tyranid tank. That's all it is. And you could say, well, it's flesh, but who cares? It's metal or chitin. It doesn't really matter. It's all just a hard material meant to stop a bullet. So why represent one with a toughness? Oh, because it could hit internal organs. Oh, well, in a tank you could hit internal pieces. Like as much as anatomy is not the same, the idea is the same. A bullet could just get through and hit the gas tank, and boom, the whole thing goes. So it's a lucky shot. And same thing as going through the Carnifex and hitting his vital organ or something. So I would merge the monstrous creatures and vehicles a lot in the way that they work, so that there's not this disparity between the weapons required to destroy a vehicle and the weapons required to take out a monstrous creature. They should be similar. And sometimes they are, like a Strength 9 AP2 last cannon is going to be good against. Well, see, it's not the same. It's better at killing a vehicle than at a monstrous creature, because monstrous creatures usually have multiple wounds. You hit that monstrous creature at the Strength 9 AP2 and you strip off a wound. You hit a vehicle, you could quite well explode it or do some serious damage to it, such as removing a weapon or immobilizing it and all of that. And that's so the vehicle becomes more squishy. I'm not saying that they're not balanced points-wise. It just means that there's more to plan for in your army, which is a problem, because it makes it harder to balance the game. Whereas, like, you look at Infinity, which is, I'm not saying it's balanced, but they've got like their big tags, like their big walkers, and they say that they have structure points instead of wounds, but they work exactly the same. It's just that you heal structure points with engineers and you heal wounds with doctors. So that's the difference between the two. But other than that, you still hit them the same. You still try to wound them the same against their armor. They usually have a higher armor, so it's easier for them to shake off a hit, but other than that, they act just the same. So that's those are the 2 things that changed. I don't know about a third, though. 3, if you were to start a 4th 40K army, what would it be? I have heard rumors of an upcoming Mechanicum Codex. What are your thoughts? A 4th army, so you're saying I have Tyranids, Necrons, and are you saying that Space Marines is my 3rd? If Space Marines was my 3rd, then I think a 4th that I'd want to start would be... Oh, it's kind of between Eldar and Tau. I'm more of a Xenos player than an Imperium player, although I do like the Imperial Guard. I like the whole lots of tank stuff. I just don't like the look of their army. I know that they're pretty straightforward, but there's something about the Xenos that I enjoy more. So probably Eldar or Tau. Eldar, maybe a bit more than Tau. 4, in the Fate of Fayoum, you said that you did not have models to represent the native feral people. Why not use your fantasy lizardmen? Yeah, that's a good idea. something I could have thought of. 5, what are your thoughts of the Horus Heresy, aka Warhammer 30K? I think it's cool. It sets up the entire story for the Chaos versus Imperium, so I think it's great. 6, just as a viewer, I think that additional terrain would make much more interesting battles. Using the same terrain over and over makes it sort of repetitive. Also, a sloped board, a valley pass, a large central hill, a path clinging to the side of a mountain could do a lot to improve a narrative campaign. Thanks. I totally agree, which is why we've commissioned a couple different terrain studios to get us some terrain. Basically, my goal is to have a full set of terrain for every race, because we don't really have terrain for the Xenos races. As for the boards being like the mountain and then slopes and all that kind of stuff, that's a little more difficult because they're much harder to store. And so it really limits how many boards we can have, because as soon as you do anything other than just have your flat board with modular terrain, the board becomes way bigger. So you put a mountain on it that's fixed, or you make it sloped, all of a sudden you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the size of the board, which makes it take up that much more space. And it's less playable because it's more specific. So my goal, let's silence this. All right, my goal is to have as much variety as possible, and so that's hard to do with these tables. That would be really fantastic. They would look really good, but then you'd see those over and over again because we wouldn't be able to have any room for any other tables. So the best thing for us is to have a very simple table, have a variety of those. So have like, and we're going to get some more of those made too, like have a grass table, a rock table, a spaceship interior table, a alien world table, a death world table, like volcanic kind of stuff, all those different types. And then we have modular terrain that we can then change up and bring in a lot of variety. So I do agree we need more terrain when we are actually getting that work done. Doric 2000, how did you meet your wife? How long did you guys date before you decided to tie the knot? How long were you married before you decided to have kids? Wow, those are some pretty personal questions, which I will gladly answer. How did I meet my wife? Through church. We both are members of the same church, and I met her. We went to what's called young single adult activities, which is just what it sounds like, young single adults. It's kind of like a youth program, but for like 20 to 30 year olds, or 18 to 30 year olds, I guess, that are single. It's just an opportunity for them to meet people that, because you have access to more than just people who are in your congregation, which is just a small number of people, and there is actually hardly anybody my age, and so then it allows you to meet a lot of others. And so I met her through that. And how long did we date before we decided to tie the knot? Well, there's two lengths. There's how long we dated before we talked about it, and how long before it was official, and then how long before we actually got married. We actually only dated 9 months before we got married. And I know that sounds fast, and I agree and disagree at the same time. We probably were only dating for a month or two before we were talking about it. But that's, in this case, we were really good friends for a long time before we started dating. So I already really knew her. We never had that awkward stage that you start off with dating, because I already knew her really well. And so it just became it became obvious very fast that that's what we wanted. As for deciding to have kids, we wanted to have kids pretty much right away. I think we were going to wait like a month or two. It took a few years to have her first, but that wasn't by choice. So there you go. Some very personal questions with some very personal answers. Other people might be bothered by those questions. I'm not. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not ashamed about any of those answers, so feel free to ask those personal questions, as long as they don't go too inappropriate kind of stuff. Lick-D9. Hi, Matt. Hi there, Matt. Hi there, Lick-D9. Do you have campaigns planned with 3 players, including you already? Not yet, but it is something I've been thinking about. But right now, we're still early in the campaign stuff, so I'd like to keep it as straightforward as possible, just so we can kind of keep toying with the idea to see where it goes. So like right now, we are filming a campaign between Dave and myself. I think there will be an announcement video up about this already before this even goes up. Orcs and Blood Angels. And so we're going to do that one, and then we're going to be working on another one between, I think, Dave and Steve. And so we want to kind of get into it before we really start. I know we could easily kind of go all out with the campaigns, but we got to do it right. And so I'd rather build up to going all out. Like, the first one was fun because it was new. The second one will be cool because Dave and I are both in it, not just me or Dave. And then we're going to start introducing better terrain, some new armies, and some really cool storylines. and maybe some really neat terrain in the future as well. Maybe multiplayer ones where, you know, it's only ever 2 players playing, but there could be a third army intermixed into it. Maybe it'll be 2-on-1 or stuff like that. There's an infinite number of possibilities with campaigns. And so over time, I'm sure you'll see us develop kind of a systematic way that we do it so that we can bring as much awesomeness as we can to the table. Or do you think having 3 guys would be too much work? Posting this before I watch the whole video so I don't forget it again once I'm done with this sit and talk. Yeah, I answered that. Rain Ow. Yo, Matt. Yo, Rain. Just decided to try out the free trial of the Marathon, the Vault episodes of the Fabium campaign. I have to say a lot more than I expected is in the Vault, and I am very impressed, and I will be a subscriber once funding allows. So for my question, I play Black Templar, and just made the jump to 6th edition. Late, I know, LOL. And with a new Imperial Knight book, I'm going to be picking one up for the Allies choice. But as for a main army choice, do you honestly think that a team of minimum 3 hold up to a standard army of the same points cost? I don't play competitively, but I don't want to be steamrolled either. A team of minimum 3, I'm assuming you mean 3 Imperial Knights. And if that's your question, I don't know, because they're pretty expensive each. They're like 370 some odd points each. And so 3 of them is going to be over 1,000 points. That's 3 super heavy vehicles. So the question is, does your opponent know you're bringing 3 Imperial Knights, or are you kind of going to surprise them with it? Because when it comes down to it, the only strength weapon that could possibly hurt it, I believe, is going to be strength 6 or higher, because I think its rear armor is 12. I can't remember. I know it's forward armor is 13, its side armor is 12. I think the rear armor is 12 as well. It might be 11. But still, even at 11, so all your strength 4 weapons, all your strength 3 weapons are out the door. And that's a lot of stuff. Unless you're Space Marines where everything has crack grenades, usually a good portion of your army is just going to be totally discounted at that point. In which case, you should be able to do quite well, because then on top of that, you've got some super strong long-range weaponry that you can use to take out the key guys that could actually hurt you. And you got 6 hull points, and you ignore everything. Like, you don't lose weapons, you don't get immobilized, you don't get stunned or shaken because you're super heavy. And in close combat, you got destroyer weapons, which will be good against those things which would be really good against you, such as monstrous creatures. So I would say that it would be very powerful. If your opponent knows that you're bringing it, I think it would be totally not powerful, because you've got 3 models. Sure, they've got some hefty firepower, but your opponent could just bring everything that could deal with that type of armor, and then take you down quite quickly. As soon as you lose 1 of your knights, you've lost a huge amount of firepower. You lose 2 of them, then, well, you're pretty much gone. So it's not very versatile, I guess I would say. It's still kind of cool. And we're getting a bunch of them painted up. I'm getting 5 of them painted up right now, actually, so that I'm actually going to do a battle report with an entire 2,000 point army of Imperial Knights, or around, I think it's like 1850 it's close to, with 5 Imperial Knights, which will be kind of fun. Then we're going to give away 3 of them, so that'll be fun as well. And then I'm going to keep a couple. So yeah, so we'll see how they play. But of course, when I play with those 5, my opponent's going to totally know that I'm bringing them, and going to totally list tailor to try to take them down, which I'm okay with, because otherwise it would be kind of silly. It's like bringing tons of flyers to a game without letting your opponent know. And if he doesn't have sufficient answer to that, then it's just kind of like, it's just dumb watching the flyers go around and killing everything. And continuing from Rain's comment, keep up the great work. I hope someday soon I may be blessed with the opportunity to challenge one of you, death or glory. I hope so too. Tycho, 1532. Hi Matt. Hi Tycho. I've only recently started playing 40k, and my love for the Zerg and StarCraft made Tyranids a no-brainer. That was exactly the same for me. If you could transplant any Zerg unit into 40k, what would you choose and why? I would transplant all of them, and I would replace most of the Tyranid units. The Tyranids, I just love their fluff. Absolutely love the lore of the Tyranids. Not a big fan of the lore of the Zerg. It's fun enough. The Heart of the Swarm was kind of, to me it was a little silly what they did with the Zerg. Still fun. I'm still going to like StarCraft. I'm still going to keep buying their single player campaign stuff, and I'll buy every expansion and play it. But they kind of went to that silly route of, I don't even know what to call it. It was just kind of weird. Whereas the Tyranids are just so perfect, and hopefully Games Workshop never ruins them or never changes them. I know you can say, well, then you can just imagine them the old way, but you can't. Like the place that makes them official is what you really want to be good. So transplanting them, like for example, well, see, like Hormagaunts are like Zerglings, and I think Hormagaunts already look pretty cool, except, you know, the whole teeth, mouth kind of thing. So I would love if Hormagaunts looked more like Zerglings, but they're still better than the rest. What I have an issue with the Tyranids, and I've said this before, is that it looks like they're holding their guns, and they're biological, and they've made an excuse as to why that is, but really it's just because they were designed back in the 80s, and so that looked cool back then. They look better than they did in the 80s, that's for sure, a lot of stuff, but there's still a lot of remnants, like those little smiley faces on the Termagants with the teeth. It's just, I'm sorry, it just doesn't do it. Carnifexes, basically, if they're going to shoot something, which they totally should, it shouldn't be a gun. It should be like the Hydralisks shoot spines, or the Mutalisks throw out the worms, or they shoot out spikes and they glob out venom. That kind of stuff all makes sense. None of this we're shooting a gun kind of thing. And so I would replace like Carnifexes with Ultralisks, because Ultralisks are just cool. Hydralisks are cool looking too, so they could replace Warriors, I guess, or Raveners. Raveners are kind of like Hydralisks. See, Raveners are cool because they actually have their weapons in their thorax, so they remind me a lot about Hydralisks because they look a lot like them, because they're like the snake-like thing that pops out of the ground, and then they shoot stuff out of their thorax, and they still have all their claws, and so that's cool. So that's what I would do. I would kind of remove things and put in things like that. David Kane. Hey, Matt. Hey, David Kane. Firstly, I'd just like to congratulate you on such a successful narrative campaign. Thank you. I'm also a big fan of Sit and Talk, so I thought I'd contribute a question of my own. So, I'm a geneticist in Ireland with a particular focus on stem cell research. Just wondering where you stood on this issue. I don't really have a stance. It doesn't bother me. I know why people have an issue with it, and I understand it, and I can sympathize with it, but I personally don't. I know it's been a highly controversial topic as of late, but do you think that sometimes negative opinions of those that may be poorly informed on an issue may potentially sway the opinions of the greater public? Totally. Oh yeah, that happens often. It's not just stem cell. That's everything. That's just life. The opinions of the few often are very loud and affect the opinions of many others. Look at the media, for example. The way the media portrays what our life is supposed to be like is so different than what it actually is. The way it portrays, this was one example, what a woman is supposed to look like and what a man is supposed to look like. Look at the movies, look at TV shows, look at everything, and it's just so different than what reality actually is. So yeah, I'd say that the few can definitely influence the many quite easily, and it often is people being very poorly informed. Like that whole MMR vaccine causing autism thing was actually that whole thing, that's whole problem that people have with vaccines now because of this one study turned out to be a falsified study, and it wasn't even a real study to begin with, and it took like dozens of other studies to debunk it. But people still have a problem with vaccines because they're ignorant. They're not stupid, they're just ignorant of what the truth actually is. But it's the damage was done, and like how many people have been sick and all this kind of stuff because of that falsified study made by a corporation funding who is actually basically anti the MMR vaccine. So that kind of stuff is very sad because there's so much more good that could be done if we would just be more informed of these things. So I tend to realize, I've kind of learned to realize when I'm ignorant of a subject, and therefore not to grab too big an opinion on it based on what I hear from just a few people until I'm ready to research it myself. Stem cell research is a good example of that. I've heard both sides. I've heard why people are against it, why people are for it. Don't really have an opinion of my own. I can say right now I'm not against it just because I simply don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. Luke F36. Hey Matt, do you have any suggestions for where to find inspiration for an Imperial Guard versus Chaos campaign? Also have to say the Fate of Faeum was what caused me to finally get the Vault membership. Thanks for the amazing content. Well, you're welcome. Exactly. Inspiration for campaigns, I get it from everywhere. I just read the codexes, actually are my biggest inspiration, but also I just kind of read. I just read as much as I can of the fluff that Games Workshop releases, and that just gives me ideas. That's really what it comes down to. I wouldn't say there's one specific place to go, but definitely read the Imperial Guard Codex, read the Chaos Codexes, because of the demons and the Space Marines, and look at the campaigns, because they include campaigns, they include things that have happened that you don't want to reenact things. I find reenacting things kind of boring because, like, what if it goes a different way? Then you're not really reenacting it. But you can take inspiration from it and say, hey, I want to do a campaign that's just like that or something similar to that. And then you just kind of go from there. As for missions, like buying the supplements that Games Workshop puts out, that give, like the Altar of War supplements that give you more missions. They're not balanced missions, but they can give you ideas as to how to do them, so you can take those and then kind of craft your own. That's basically what I do. Johnny Wraith. Hey Matt. Hey Johnny Wraith. Hopefully you get to this one. Your hopes have been confirmed. It was funny hearing you say that you don't believe in monkeys evolving into humans while wearing a t-shirt featuring a monkey evolving into a human and then to a space marine. Wasn't that said last week? I think it was. This is not a shot at what you believe. I just found it funny that you said it while wearing that shirt. Yeah, that was ironic. 2, as many other viewers, my friends and I are starting a narrative campaign after watching yours. I think that's awesome. I think that's my favorite part, is that so many people are like, we're going to make a narrative campaign now. So we're going to finally start having fun with 40K rather than trying to play it competitively and beating our head on the walls over and over again as we try to beat tournaments and stupid lists, and we try to tweak our list and this, and now we're going to actually have some fun. We decided to add another twist to it. We'll all start with an army worth 6,000 points. The battles will be the usual 2K, but the catch is that any unit that dies during the battle cannot be used again or removed from your total. Hopefully this will add another layer of strategy that you have to keep in mind throughout the campaign. Should be fun. I actually read this comment and I was like, totally going to do that in one of our future campaigns, because I already have an idea for a campaign. I don't want to say it just because it might take a long time before I get to it, and people, as soon as I tell people an idea that I have, I get hounded forever. When are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? And it's like, well, when I get to it, or maybe never. So, but I love that idea, and I'm going to be, well, I'm planning on using it in a future campaign. Finally, I want to let you know that Chris and his awesome videos were the main reason I joined the Vault a few months ago. In my mind, that should be reason enough for him to get a brand new Mac. Hang in there, Chris. We got your back.
Thank you.
He just said thank you. I'm wearing a microphone now, so they might not be able to hear you as well.
Thank you!
They definitely heard that. I could see the thing go right up to the top. They probably could have heard you the first time, just not as well as they in the past. You know, anyway.
Hopefully nobody's wearing headphones.
Yeah, if you're wearing headphones, I apologize for Chris's. Okay, you know what? Just lost his Mac. Gab, hi Matt. Hey Gab. I'm thinking of starting orcs when the new codex comes out. How does pink armored orc sound like? I don't know. What is the sound of a pink armored orc? What is the sound of a pink armored orc?
Wah.
Is it Wog, but with a girly voice? Wog! Hey, well, that sounds more like a Gretchen or something. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a female trying to wog. There you go.
You're implying pink is for females.
It totally is. Pink is normally associated with females. I don't think it's sexist to say something like that. Blue is typically boys. Pink is typically girls. If you're a boy and you like pink, that's okay. And if you're a girl and you like blue, that's totally okay, actually, because girls get everything that boys get, but boys don't get everything that girls get without being called girls. There's something to stir the pot. Anyway. Miso. I've always thought it's such a shame that some religious groups... Oh, sorry, I was reading your comment. Very... whatever. But then it turned into religion, so I've got to be a little more... serious. I've always thought it's such a shame that some religious groups took up an anti-evolution stance. I think evolution is beautiful and completely compatible with the Creator. Evolution doesn't disprove God or tells us how things began. It just shows us how things all work. I agree. I think the main issue that religious people have is what is taught in schools as absolute truth. Because you actually do get teachers who will say, you know, this is how it worked. And they are misinformed because even scientists, any scientist who is not too proud to admit it, will say, well, this is how we think it works. We have good evidence that this is how it's going to work. I had a really good grade 7 teacher, Mr. Campbell. And we had a geography class or something, or maybe it was, I don't remember, it's grade 7, so who knows what it was called, science class. And he was talking about the animals that live in like the deep oceans near the heat fissures. Like they're really bizarre and alien-like looking creatures that never knew exist. Like if you bring them to the surface, they actually like explode because they're so used to the pressure of the deep ocean. And I put up my hand because I was curious, and I'm like, how did those get down there? Because how would something kind of appear down there, and like how would something float down there and all of a sudden start to evolve that way? And his reply was great, because in my mind, I was like, I believe in God, I believe in creation, but I was just asking a question because even though I believe in creation, there's still like things change, things move, things migrate. So there's a ways for animals to start at one place and end up somewhere else, and then they maybe adapt to that area. But his answer was, well, it depends if you believe if God created them that way or if they got evolved that way. And I wasn't satisfied with that answer because I wanted it, like, how did they get there? And I wanted you to answer that. But at the same time, I look back on that, I'm like, that's the way a teacher should teach it. They should be like, well, that depends on what you believe, because there's evidence pointing towards evolution, and then there's the belief that God created stuff. Although the way he said it almost sounded like they were at odds with each other, which isn't necessarily the case. But still, a lot of teachers won't do that. And I think that's the problem that religious people have, is that their kids will go to school and the teacher will be like, we evolved this way, the Big Bang happened, and there's no God. They won't necessarily say there's no God, but they will imply it by the way that they teach. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people have. But instead of tackling that issue, they go instead towards the theory and say, well, we don't want evolution taught. Or if it's taught, we want creationism taught. But creationism doesn't need to be taught in schools. That needs to be taught at church. It's just that, so we have all this miscommunication, and the wrong issue is addressed, and therefore then people who believe in science stuff think that religious people don't believe in it, because a lot of them don't. There's a lot of them out there that don't. I'm not sure for the majority. I can't speak for the majority. So that's the issues that we kind of run into. And that's kind of what we will have to try to avoid with all these different things that are being brought into our schools. So yeah, I agree with you, and I can see why they do it, but I agree that sometimes it's done the wrong way, I guess I would say. Paradox. Will Dark Potential Wave 2 be released in 2014, or does the company need more work still? P.S. I love the Dark Potential lower-end models. I would almost guarantee that Wave 2 will not be released in 2014. I have no plans to do that this year. I still have plans to do Dark Potential, but the Vault and our content has really taken off over the past few months, and so my time is being devoted to that. I'm making tons of videos, if you haven't noticed. That's not a shot, but I've been making a lot of videos, and I need to continue focusing on it because the Vault is growing, which is allowing us to stabilize after the store being closed, and we need to make sure that it's going to be a long-term thing. So that, because if I want to do Dark Potential, I basically got to take out at least a couple days a week that I'm going to be taking care of that, because there's a lot to do, tons of stuff to do. And I don't have the time to do that yet. So I think at this point, I would say that money-wise, we could probably start tackling it again. Like, we don't have the $500,000 that I would love to be able to throw at it, but we could probably start to slowly work at it. But it's more the time issue that is now a factor, that since I'm doing so much content, that I don't have time to develop it. So once both of those things kind of get taken care of, once we have the money to do it, and once maybe there are more employees hired and that we can afford because the Vault has grown, to make more content, meaning I won't have to make as much content. I might still appear in a lot of content, but since I'm not the one producing and editing and all that, it takes up less of my time. That'll free up my time, and then I can consider things like actually going back to Dark Potential. Because the big thing that I learned from doing the Dark Potential Indiegogo campaign was just how much it would take to really go all out with it. And I know I could just do the occasional miniature here and there, but I don't want to do it piecemeal. I would lose interest. If I'm going into it, I want to go into it with the resources to do it right and to see it through to the end and actually get a full game out, even if it's just a couple factions at first. But like, those factions would be very playable with a really good set of rules and all of that. I think that is necessary in order to really get Dark Potential going, and any gaming company out there. And since I am not a sculptor, I can't just, like, on my spare time just do the occasional one here and there. I know I could hire a sculptor here and there, but that means I would still have to I'd have to get concept art, I'd have to work with concept artists. It would take a lot of energy away from what I'm doing with everything else. So totally want to do it still, don't get me wrong, but it's gonna be a little while. Let me just put it that way. That's a long-term plan for mini wargaming. We got to kind of see where everything goes. Like, we just shut down the store last year. Like, that's a huge change in our business structure. And so we got to make sure we can survive it. And so far, we've been doing very well. But in business, a year is not a lot of time. It's a small amount of time. So we need to see what happens over the course of years. I'm not saying it'll be years before I start working on Dark Potential. I'm just saying that it's hard to tell the future at this point, because it's just a little too soon. Phoenix Rising. Hey Matt, I thought the campaign was great. What would you suggest for a Tyranid kill team? Kill teams are kind of interesting because there's so many ways to make them broken. With the new kill team rules, the Tervigons are no longer really viable. They used to be really fun because you'd bring it and it could spawn more models, and that was kind of cheesy. Kill team depends. Like, I like smaller groups of smaller amounts of models, so I would bring, like, I'd probably do warriors, close combat oriented warriors. I think that's what I would do. Gene Stealers would be fun too. In a smaller game, they wouldn't die quite as quickly, so maybe try them out as well. But Kill Team, you just kind of do whatever. It's just, it's silly, but fun silly, because it just gets you, it lets you have like really quick games, and since it's smaller numbers of models, it doesn't balance. Like 200 points of Eldar against 200 points of Tyranids. Heck, just different 200 points of Tyranids are going to have vastly different levels of power. So, Random Idiot 2. All right, you chose that username. Hi, 2 questions. 1, X-Wing League in the future? Quite possibly. 2, why haven't you advertised the fact that the vlogs are on a separate channel? As I had no idea there was a separate channel. We do actually. Every time I post a sit and talk, I use my main channel and I like the video and I add it to the sit and talk playlist, which is on the main channel. Which means if you're subscribed to our main YouTube channel, then in the feed, you should most likely see that I both liked it and added it to the sit and talk playlist. And if you're on the YouTube Mini Wargaming channel, then there would be a link in the top right, I think it is, to our second channels. I think there's a Mini Wargaming Vlogs and Mini Wargaming Let's Play. That's where I do like the Minecraft stuff. That's just totally just for fun, and that's really it. Ed Markle, it ate my comment again. Your site hates me. Nobody could hate you, Ed. Not after all those cool models you sent me. Not going to write it all again. Well, okay, just this once. 1, is your wife a gamer? She's played role-playing games growing up, and we've played like D&D groups together. So I would say yes, but not nearly as much as me. She's not really a war gamer. She has expressed an interest in getting into War Machine, just because last Valhalla, when she was there, she was surprised at how many, and I was surprised at how many girls were actually there. And they were all actually playing War Machine. And so she thought, that's kind of cool. I could go and I could play War Machine. So she wants me to teach her War Machine before the next Valhalla. So we'll see how that works out. Is Dave's wife a gamer? Definitely not. I would definitely not put her in there. So my wife is totally a nerd. Dave's wife, I wouldn't classify her as a nerd. No. Not that that's an insult. It's kind of funny that I have to be like, I'm not insulting her. Whereas before it was like calling somebody a nerd is the insult. 2, you served in the Australian Brisbane mission? I did not. I served in the French Polynesian Tahiti Papeete mission. Australia Brisbane mission, there I have known people that have served there though. Jonathan Burton, the guy who makes StarCrafts, I think he served there. He served in Australia, I just don't know which one. That's my old mission. 3, Privateer Press has 3 vids about books for their A, Iron Kingdoms RPG, taking it to the Hordes areas, B, Hordes Exogenes where Warbeasts can run in packs, and C, War Machine Faction Cephalix. Give a watch, 15 minutes tops, tell us what you think. Oh, they have vids about their books. I'm like, give a watch, their books. But no, yes, you said videos about their books. I should take a look at those. Eventually I do want to do War Machine campaigns, but I do need to learn more about their fluff. As your boss, you should know we take a dim view of you enjoying your job, but due to you and your team's outstanding performance, we'll let it slide. For now, LOL. Keep up the content. More Steve, please. More War Machine Hordes, please. Rolling with the Dice Kings, Mini Wargaming. Salin Ninja. Hey, Matt. Hey, Salin Ninja. I've been a Vault member for about a month now, I think. You're awesome, and I love it. Even better. Love the banter bat reps, Fame campaign, and these sit and talks. Since I live on the countryside here in Sweden, I don't have anyone to play. That's tough. That's very tough. I have a similar issue here, except for the fact that since I have this business, people are able to come in. But if I didn't have this business, it would be kind of hard to find players to play against. So the hobby for me is mostly building and painting the miniatures. Anyway, I've been trying to get my friends interested in 40K, but I've failed so far in getting anyone interested, since it's such a big universe. So my latest attempt at getting people in the miniatures is by making up a new drinking game. This is a small community and we love to party around here. So I thought it would be fun to mix our different interests to get people into 40K and so on. Any thoughts on that? Oh, you're asking the wrong person. I don't drink. Let me just leave it at that. So creating a drinking game is not something I would want to do or participate in or suggest that anybody else do. So getting people into 40K or wargaming in general is tough. I've tried it in the past, and I think the only people I've really managed to get into it are Dave, and that's it. Dan Medwin, Dan, the guy who used to work for us, I think I got him into it. I know he was kind of into it when he was younger, but I think he got more into it when we were into it. Dan Roy, I think, say a similar kind of thing where he knew about it before but got more into it when we did. And that's about it, I think. I think that's all that I've personally, not the business, but me personally, before we really had the business, got people into it. And it was tough. There's a lot of people that came in and left, like, because it takes a lot of commitment to do this hobby, and which is why it's always going to be a niche market. It can grow because the population of the world grows and the internet is making it more exposed, so there's more people who can see it and how cool it is and how much they want to do it. But it's always going to be a niche market, and compared to like things like computer games or role-playing games even will always be more popular, or card games like Magic the Gathering will always be more popular because they're just more accessible, easier to get into, easier to learn, less painting or no painting, cheaper in some ways, sometimes more expensive because you could buy a lot of Magic cards, but still. My plan is to get people interested when they see some good-looking miniatures and how fun it can be to play with dice. It is quite a complex drinking game, and I haven't been able to finish the rules yet. We'll have the alpha test for the game in 2 weeks, I think. I don't think what matters is what kind of rules you use if it's involving lots of drinking, because I think a lot of the rules will kind of get fuzzy after a while. Still, it would be fun to hear someone else's opinion on getting new people into the game. Okay. All right. Geeko170, thanks for answering my question on the last talk. I didn't know that mechanic was used so widely. Thanks and have a nice day. I don't remember which mechanic I was talking about, but you're welcome. Drakiskier, it's pronounced Drakiskier. Oh, okay, pretty close. Drakiskier, but just call me Drakis. All right, Drakis. I love the campaign vids. Keep up the wonderful work. I'm going to work out with my friends for a campaign myself. Thought, though, it would probably be against Ultramarines. Sounds like fun. Furious Viking, here is a very dark subject, broken flashlight. Anyway, what is the least logical comment you've responded to? I think yours is up there. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know. Personally, I think based on the scale from 1 to banana, the theory of flying pigs on Wednesdays are left with purple. Knowing this, bacon should be green, but still it's unreadable. Therefore, the world should end due to hyperpencil seals that ate all the paragraphs from the tree of ice cream. Thank you for your time. I shall now spill my wisdom upon others. Do not forget this. Yeah, that's probably one of them. More or less relevant. Hi, Matt. Hello, more or less relevant. First of all, I very much enjoy the sit talks. Thank you. Especially that you do not shy away from sensitive subjects, even if I tend to heavily disagree most of the time. Well, thank you, I think. With that in mind, I'm an astroparticle physicist working in the field of dark matter. Whew, that's pretty cool. Don't read my dark potential fluff, because you'll probably pick it to pieces. So I was wondering what you think of modern cosmology, i.e. the Big Bang Theory. I talked about this last time. I think it's super awesome, super cool, and super fascinating. I love to read as much as I can about it, stuff I can understand, because if you read like a paper on astrophysicists, you have to be an astrophysicist to understand what they're saying. But I love reading books where they try to explain it to the layman, you know, the person who doesn't know all the big words. And I think it's fascinating, very fascinating. Big Bang and dark matter is closely related. The standard model of cosmology is called lambda CDM, where lambda denotes dark energy and CDM stands for cold dark matter. And yes, dark potential's use of dark matter and its fluff makes me cringe. I'm going to be changing that. Since I did the dark potential fluff, I've learned a lot more. And so, I don't know. I just, the whole thing's probably going to get retconned by the time I do it again, and I think that'll be okay because it'll have been so long and so few people really got into it that, you know, they should get bothered by it. I might even rename it. The whole dark potential, the reason, the idea that this came from is before I really understood physics, and which was not very long ago, I had pictured this link between like a piece of matter like that would cause gravity. Like, how can something that's so far away cause gravity to me? Now I understand more of the theories of Einstein's general relativity, of the whole warping space-time with their mass. But before I didn't know that. And so I pictured everything was linked by this invisible strand. And there's a bajillion infinite number of strands, of course. But I was wondering what would happen if you could, and we call this potential energy because we learned this in physics, that you have kinetic and potential, right? You lift an object up, then it gains gravitational potential energy, you let it go, and that gets converted into kinetic. So I thought, well, what if you could lift it up and then snip that strand between the two of it and release that gravity or gravitational potential energy and turn it into whatever you want. And so, and then the thing wouldn't fall. It would actually just float there because it no longer has gravitational potential energy in relation to that one thing. Of course, that's impossible. You can't snip something that doesn't exist, and it's the gravity is there because of the warp in space-time. I understand that now, but that was kind of my thought. It's like, well, if I could do that, because if you think about it, a strand between me and a distant star would be a humongous amount of potential energy, because how much energy would it take to move me all the way to there? Would be a lot of energy. And so if I could snip that one, I would instantly have access to a ton of energy with very little effect on myself, because like it's already so far away that it's barely affecting, that gravity is barely affecting me in proportion to everything else. So that was where the whole potential thing came from. And then I thought, well, why not use dark matter as the thing, because dark matter plays a lot with gravity. And so then dark potential came to be. And then so it was named dark potential. And then I started working with that, and then I started learning a lot more about it, and more that I did with it, the more I realized that my ideas really didn't work at all with any reality. It was a cool concept in my mind, but it just doesn't work. And so I'm going to have to kind of look at it again. I still like the concept that it has of manipulating fields, but gravity is, I always thought gravity was a field just like electromagnetism. And I know it kind of is, but I mean like in the sense that electromagnetism, the way it transmits its force is by force carrying particles, right? Like photons, well, like photons. And so then I thought, well, then there would be this graviton, which has been theorized, which I'm not sure what the status of that is, but from what I understand, it doesn't need to be a graviton, because there's a warp in space-time, and that's where we get the force of gravity, this acceleration that gives us the sensation of gravity. And so since if there is no particle, then how do you manipulate it without actually warping space-time itself? But how would you manipulate space-time without matter? In which case, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to have to rethink it. But the idea of this post-apocalyptic, I still want to do a post-apocalyptic war game, and I still want it to kind of follow the same storyline, because really the storyline is not really affected by the science of it. So I can change the science without having to change the storyline too much, and we'll see. But it's tough, because the part of me that loves physics, astrophysics in particular, that realizes just how ignorant I am of it. It's hard to like just to dive into it. But I know at the same time that a lot of science fiction authors have just written, they've become very popular, and astrophysicists would cringe at their science because they're just authors. They've done their research, they've done the best they can, but in the end, they don't fully understand it. And so how much do I allow myself to be impacted by people that are astrophysicists who can pick out every flaw, and how much do I just kind of allow myself to have fun and come up with something imaginative? And it's because you can squash imagination by applying too much reality. That's the opposite of imagination, right? In reality and imagination, you can imagine something that's not reality. And sometimes you don't even care about, like you play 40K and there's not 1 ounce of reality in all of their science, and yet you can still love it and enjoy it. You just kind of ignore the fact that it's not. But I love the idea of making it kind of work with science, so that somebody that's a science buff would play it and be like, this is really cool, I love the science behind this. Of course, there will always be advancements in science that disprove things that I would come up with, and I'd have to have a perfect knowledge of all general relativity and stuff to be able to really come up with a rule system and lore that would really make sense. I'd have to have like a whole team of astrophysicists and biologists and everything else to make sure that everything fits, and even then there might be disagreements amongst people of what fits and what wouldn't. And then I'd be stuck to just do everything that we know today and not be able to kind of go forward. Like look at Star Trek. Star Trek is a good example of, let's just forget science. Let's just go fiction. Like I know that you might think, well, Star Trek actually, not you, the astrophysicist, but most people would look at that and think, well, that's better science than say Star Wars, and it's true. But the fact that they have teleportation, or they have their replicators, those things are incredible advances in technology, and even maybe possibly impossible. Or the teleporter simply making a copy of the person and killing the original, in which case I wouldn't want to use it, and all that kind of stuff. So it's tough. It's tough. I do want to redo a lot of the dark potential stuff. So when I go at it, I want to have full resources to be able to do that. So, and you know what? When I go to do it, feel free to criticize in the nicest way possible. Try to be uplifting, because I'll tell you, when as somebody who's trying to create something, if there's too much negativity, it drains energy, and you're just like, oh, I can't do this. But if instead, what I loved is when people came forward and said, okay, your idea doesn't really work because of this, but here's how your idea could work. And then throw in your 2 cents. I would love that. So don't be afraid to be a big contributor to kind of criticizing the fluff and the lore as it is created. Lux. Matt, you should borrow Joel's Everblight and do a bat rep with them. I think you'd have a lot more fun with running a beast-heavy army that's actually designed for that than moving blobs of Khador infantry. Also, what is your favorite individual model of all time, looks-wise? I agree. I think I'd be more a Hordes player once I get back into War Machine and Hordes. Right now, I'm just so focused on 40k and Infinity that I don't have time for that. What's my favorite individual model of all time? I don't know this. I don't have one. Playing Tyranids and Necrons, there's not really that one model that's super impressive. In fact, there's a lot of models I don't like, but I still enjoy the overall the game. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that one. I can see and appreciate a lot of good paint jobs, but I can't think of one model that I'm just like, I love that model. And Marco, whoops, forgot this one. What music does Chris listen to too loudly? Gregorian chants, whale song, humpback, of course, right whales, and blue whales too. Can't sing to save their lives. He actually listens to everything. It's such a wide variety that it's just everything.
Eclectic.
Eclectic? Is that what you call it? What's eclectic?
Just everything and anything.
Yeah.
Except country.
Don't like country?
I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah. But honestly, I'll hear a soundtrack for a movie one day. I'll hear, I don't even, like, just all sorts of stuff.
Heavy metal.
Heavy metal? That probably bothers me the most. I grew up with my brother just blasting heavy metal. Oh, yeah, see? That's what you get. You just kick some metal. How does it feel? Doesn't feel very good, does it? Okay, anyway. Ewan Stockwell, Duo 1177. Hey Matt, once again, thanks for answering my question. It's interesting to see a religion that sees God still keeping in touch with humanity. I have 2 questions. Yeah, it is. 1, this is an obvious atheistic argument, but what has the God of the Bible and the Book of Mormon, but what have the God of the Bible and Book of Mormon, etc., the real God, what evidence do you have that it was in fact Zeus that created all of us? I don't have evidence that it in fact was Zeus. I think your wording is a little off here. I'm trying to figure out. This is an obvious thing, but what has the God of the Bible and Book of Mormon, etc., the real God? What evidence do you have that it was in fact Zeus that created all of us? I think what you're asking, I think it's just worded weird, is what evidence do I have that the God that I believe in is the God as opposed to Zeus or the Buddhist gods or whatever? And that's a good question. I don't have any evidence, of course, and I know some people will be like, ha ha, ha ha. But it's the answer to that question is a very in-depth one, because it involves really discussing why I have faith and belief in God overall, and prophets and apostles in the earth today that receive direction from Him directly. And so the evidence, I guess if I were to put it simply, the evidence that I have is that I have learned for myself that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God, and therefore that confirms things like Joseph Smith being a prophet, which allows, and he's revealed a lot about the nature of God that has clarified a lot of things from the Bible, including having the Book of Mormon translated, which reveals a lot of the attributes of God too, and really clarifies it. So that's the evidence I have, I guess, the evidence of my faith, which I know won't be a satisfying answer to somebody who's looking, and I'm not offended by your question, but I understand that you have to be in the right frame of mind to be able to seek for those types of answers. And number 2, as an atheist, I have a hard time enjoying religious holidays, as I feel out of place when the news, etc., is talking about religion. Admittedly, this isn't as much as a problem in the UK, but I was wondering if you had any suggestion. Maybe make a tradition of my own? Well, a lot of the holidays, the religious holidays, have kind of been secularized anyways. Like, look at Christmas, Santa Claus. As much as I don't disagree with having Santa Claus, much of the world, at least the world of finance focuses, or on commerce, I should say, focuses on Santa Claus over Jesus Christ, and for good reason. They don't want to ostracize a lot of their customers. And so it's just Santa Claus everywhere. So there's a good tradition. There's nothing wrong with Santa Claus. I think even, obviously as an atheist, you're still going to believe in being good towards each other. So having the idea of giving gifts and stuff isn't bad. Even if it did stem from a religious thing. Easter is the same thing. It's the celebration of resurrection, but then there's the Easter bunny and all that kind of stuff, which does have symbolism towards it, but at the same time, it's easy to do it without the symbolism. So that's the only two, really. Like, I know a lot of the other holidays stemmed from something, but at the same time has kind of become its own thing. I would just enjoy the day off, the day of pay, and just kind of ignore the stuff that you don't believe. You're surrounded, everybody's surrounded by stuff that they don't believe in. Even as a Christian, I'm surrounded by lots of things that disagree with my beliefs. So that's just part of life. I would just, I don't know, I guess it's just not too big a deal. Let everybody just kind of celebrate in their own way, and you celebrate in your way. Create traditions of your own. Traditions are great. Gives your family something to kind of look forward to and remember when they're older. So definitely encourage that. Thanks in advance. My questions are often quite loaded, so I take no offense if they are cut short just a little bit. Oh, I have no problem with it. The only issue that I would have with any questions is how long it would take me to really reply to them in a very good fashion, because I find that when I answer really quickly and just really basically, it's easy for people in the future ones to point out like, oh, there's fallacies in that. It's like, well, the only fallacy is because I haven't had a chance to really, in a face-to-face discussion where we could bounce back and forth really quick so you can see what I actually mean, rather than just a few things that I say that might get misconstrued. So that's the hard part. Clavis. Last episode, you talk about your life background in business and computer gaming. Can you give an overview of your nerd background? Ever done a LARP or being a GM in a game of D&D? Or is it all about computer miniature wargaming? Love the Fate of Fee. I'm already waiting for the next narrative campaign. Good job. My nerd background started when I was a teenager, I guess. I got into Battletech, actually with Dave. We got into Battletech. I played role-playing games. Even when I was younger than that, I guess. Because when I was in elementary school, I got into if you ever heard of Fighting Fantasy, ironically, maybe not ironically, created by the same creators of Games Workshop, Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone. Not the Steve Jackson that makes the board games, that's a different Steve Jackson. But I read those books, didn't realize that I was reading books of the creators of the game that I'd eventually be making a whole business that would focus a lot on. But they're called Fighting Fantasy. They're basically choose your own adventure, but they incorporated the elements of a role-playing game in that you would roll a very simple character. They had 3 stats, skill, stamina, and luck. And very, very straightforward system. Stamina was your health, was your hit points. And luck, you could use it up to get through situations. I actually liked the luck system out of all of it. It was really neat. And then you'd play and you'd choose your own adventure, but sometimes you'd come across things that'd be like, oh, you lose health, or you gain health, or you find this object that gives you this. And or things like you have a fight against somebody, so you have to roll for them, and obviously you can cheat and do whatever you want, but depends how you want to play through it. So that's how I started off. And then one day I was in a bookstore with my grandmother, and she was buying me a gift of what I wanted, so I picked out something that said Advanced Fighting Fantasy, and I thought it was just a really cool Fighting Fantasy book, but it turned out that it was actually a role-playing game meant for groups. But I didn't get that. It took me a while to figure it out, because I actually had grabbed one of the supplements, not even like the original one. So eventually we got into that with Dave and my brothers and just some other odd people as well from church or other people I knew. And I would GM that. And it was a lot of fun. Very simple system, and for some reason that just kind of creates a really, really fun atmosphere because you kind of do whatever you want and the system doesn't bog you down. And then we got into Battletech, which is, I guess, our first official miniature war game. Didn't really know that that's what it was when we played it, just thought it was a really fun game. And not that there's a problem with it being a miniature war game. And then we eventually got into Mech Warrior, which is the role-playing game of Battletech. So it's where you role-play the Mech Warriors, the guys, so you're not really inside the battle mechs. And that was a lot of fun. Then I kind of created my own as well. And yeah, so that's made, and we played a bit of D&D 4th edition as well. It was okay. Not very role-playing-ish. It's more like a miniature war game. A squad-based miniature war game. That's kind of how you have to look at it if you're going to play it. And I haven't really done much since, besides, of course, tons of miniature wargaming. Just because now with family life, until we're older and our kids are older, it'll be hard to really get back into that. I do look forward to the day when I can do role-playing games with my kids. That'll be a lot of fun. Oh, I'm out of time. What time is it? All right. I'm going to do a couple more. Bernsta. Hi, Matt. Hi, Bernsta. I'm slowly starting to get my first army together and looking for some Necron advice. I have a Battle Force, Annihilation Barge, a box of Lich Guard I put shields on, 1 box of Immortals I built with Tesla, and 3 Wraiths. I have a second Battle Force coming next week. What are your thoughts on using the Warrior chest legs from the second Battle Force to build 15 more Immortals with Gauss, and 5 more Lich Guard as staffs? Would I be better off with the 20 Warriors as is instead? And what would you add to this army? I'm trying to stay away from Flyers and was thinking a second Barge and more Wraiths for sure. Would love your thoughts though. Thanks, keep up the great videos, join the vault, and never looking back now. Awesome. You didn't mention that you have an Overlord, so you definitely need an Overlord because you need one to lead your army. Whether that's a Destroyer Lord or Overlord, that's really just a taste that your choice, really. I would go for, you definitely need Warriors. Like, Immortals are great, they're awesome, but Warriors are cheap and they can bring the barges. The Ghost Arcs, sorry. So you want Ghost Arcs full of Warriors. It's just a good staple. Like when you get 10 Warriors in a Ghost Arc, it's a killing machine. There's tons of shooting. It's all strength 4, but it'll take out vehicles with very little problems because it's Gauss, so it auto glances on 6s. So it's like awesome. Like Necrons against Imperial Knights would just be kind of dumb because it would just be like glance you to death. Your 6 hull points, whatever. See you later. But yeah, I would buy Immortals to make Immortals. I wouldn't convert them from Warriors. They just don't have the same beefiness to them. And Warriors are just so easy to assemble and paint up that you can kind of get a lot of them together at the same time. So definitely get some Warriors. I would recommend like 2 or 3 Ghost Arcs full of Warriors, and then have a couple full squads of Immortals. Have one that's all Gauss and one that's all Tesla. More often than not, Tesla will be what you'll want to use, but you can always proxy the Gauss ones for Tesla. Colin Clare. Hello again, Matthew. Hello, Colin Clare. Thanks for answering my question in the last talk. Is there a way to upgrade to gold from silver? I have not been able to find a way. Basically, you need to cancel the current membership and just sign up for the next one. If you have a yearly membership, then contact support so they can prorate a refund for the rest of the year. Do you like Game of Thrones? I find it to be an extremely entertaining show and also an interesting look at human nature. I've stayed far away from Game of Thrones just because of its very inappropriate nature. It's actually too high a level of violence, way too much sexuality. That kind of those themes just don't. It's not something I want in a TV show. I know, like some people will be like, "Ah," but that's fine. That's my opinion of Game of Thrones. I also played the board game recently. It was one of the best board games I've ever played. Perhaps a board game series would be an option for mini wargaming if you have the time. LOL. Yeah, it's one of their ideas for an expansion in the long run because we're not even covering the war games very well. If you think about it, we could cover 40K way more, War Machine way more, Infinity way more, Fantasy somewhat at all, and there's so many other games out there. So I'd like to kind of flesh that all out first, and then if we're looking for a way of expansion, board games is actually quite a good one. But we've got to be ready to do it. Like, do it. Like, have a couple employees who are just like, okay, we're going to be taking care of this, and we'll put out lots of board game content. So I don't want to just do it here and then. We kind of dabbled in it before, and it's not something I want to do yet. All right, I think that's it. All right. I got through almost 7 pages. That's not too bad. So just a reminder, go ahead and click on the link in the video description if you're watching us on YouTube to go and leave a comment. If you're on the Mini Wargaming site, leave a comment, and also just kind of browse through the comments and thumbs up the ones that you want answered, because I will answer the ones that are thumbed up first and then the ones based on when they were posted. And if things are tied for thumbs up, then it's based on which was posted first. But most likely anything that's thumbed up will get answered, just because I'm assuming there won't be nearly as many as overall the comments. So thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more Sit and Talks. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. Happy Wargaming.